All right, let's talk about lockout strength in the deadlift and lockout strength on the bench press. Why are you having trouble locking out the weight? What is your biggest problem? Now, for me, what I'm noticing is that, or what I've been learning, I should say, a lot of stuff that, like this is Jason Blaha from Juggernaut Fitness TV. His opinion on powerlifting and strength training is that it has a lot to do with just getting faster from the bottom. So if you're faster on the deadlift, you're more explosive, you're going to lock out. You're going to have a faster lockout. Makes a lot of sense. Same thing with the bench. If you're faster off the bench, off the chest, from a pause bench, or even just a touch and go bench, you're going to lock it out. Instead of doing kind of like specialized training, like accommodating resistance, like doing chains and bands for both bench and deadlift, where the weight is getting more difficult at the top of the movement. My only problem with doing like accommodating resistance is I feel like it messes with the bar path and screws with your technique too much. So, again, this is not my experience. I just heard people say this. And anything that's going to mess with my technique, I fucking hate, because I don't want to have to relearn a movement, because I'm already trying to relearn the movement at a new weight, right? When it comes to improving your lockout strength, a lot has to do with just getting better at the lift. We all know this is very intuitive, but as I kind of think off the top of my head right now, when you lift really heavy, really hard, really fast, like a deadlift, right? And you're trying to accelerate the weight, if you're really strong, you're going to lock it out. And what you're trying to do, obviously, is try to be in the best, most optimal position possible to get the most leverage on the weight. If you're able to do that from the start of the lift, you're going to lock that bitch out. If you lose position even just a little bit, it's going to be a grinder. Everyone knows, like if you do like a conventional deadlift and you lock out too quickly, you're going to lose a shitload of leverage. In a video I'll link in the description, I did the 500-pound deadlift challenge with Omar Isaf on YouTube. And you'll see a video of me where I basically get the bar, I think, to my knees or even past my knees. But because I locked out my knees too quickly, I couldn't finish the movement because the bar got too far in front of me. My technique has gotten a lot better since then. But that's sort of kind of what I'm thinking. Try to maintain the best position possible and be as explosive as possible from that position so that you can get enough acceleration and from speed from the bottom. So kind of as I think out loud and I make this video, I'm thinking, okay, is it really about speed from the bottom, right? Or is it really about speed, or is it really about strengthening your weak spot? Like Brandon Lilly had this thing in one of his videos, he talked about wherever you're slowing down in a deadlift, put the bar there and train from that range of motion so that you can get faster through that sticking point. Makes a lot of sense. I want to try that. I haven't tried that in my training yet. But my viewpoint is that I do overthink lifts a lot, and that can be a problem for me. It's actually a big problem, but I do overthink of it because, again, I'll repeat what I just said earlier, is that you're trying to maintain the best optimal position to get the most leverage out of your muscles. The more leverage you get out of your muscles, the more leverage you're going to get out of the weight. And you want to get there as fast as you can so that you can yank the weight. In a previous video I made about the hamstring catch, or trying to teach the hamstring catch, that's sort of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to like catch that position in the hamstring where I get the most leverage while maintaining a really strong arch to activate my hamstrings and glutes and get them to fire at the same time as hard as possible, get the weight off the ground. It's interesting because when I do that hamstring catch sort of tightening, what I've noticed is that with 315 or 325, that weight floats off the ground. It is ridiculous. It's kind of cool, actually. But when the weight's like above 450, it's a lot different. I miss my position. I miss my position because the weight is very heavy. Like when I get into the high 400s, my shoulders begin to round too much. So then the bar path is essentially adjusting a little bit. So because when the bar gets too heavy, it has no choice but to kind of want to fold you in half. So it's almost like, when you get to 600 pounds or you're going up to basically close to what is your limit almost, you have a lot of physics working against you, because a lot of the time I will accelerate the weight and I'm explosive enough to a point where if I really give it everything I got, depending on the day, depending on how much rest I have, depending on how I set up my workout programming, anything below like 520 or lower, 520 pounds, is basically where I can yank the weight and pull right through. But when the weight starts to get above that, I'm going to get yanked forward and I might miss the lift. So there's a lot of risk. Now, there's always risk, but there's a lot of high increase of loss of leverage. Because when you're pulling the weight off the ground, you're trying to get as much leverage as you possibly can. And in a lot of my deadlift video series, I talked about, positioning your hips back like you're falling backwards. And I think one of the best things you can do when you're trying to improve your lockout strength is to watch other deadlifters. I mean, I've heard Mark Bell watch his older videos. He talked about find people, watch their videos, find people that have a similar weight, similar build as you, and watch them lift. Watch them lift and see if you can mimic it, or maybe you can get an idea of what their leverages are, because then that way you can translate it. I'll link another video in the description of Chris Ramos deadlifting 635 pounds. Freaking very, very explosive. Competes at 198. He's basically the same height as me, has a similar build as me, he's ridiculously strong, elite level power lifter, right? You see this guy, he's like, holy shit. I mean, he basically falls back and he yanks the bar like so hard, so fast that it locks out. It's almost like, it looks like he at least 30 or 40 more pounds left in him, So, as I make this video and as I kind of talk more out loud, I'm starting to get the idea and think that working out during the weak spots of your lift, like accommodating resistance with bands, using blocks to pull past weak points, heavy block pulls, maybe deficit deadlifts. I think those things are sort of not ideal for the simple fact that they change your mechanics. I should take that back about deficits, because deficit deadlifts, I really think there's actually a lot of benefit there. And as I think out loud as I make this video, I'm thinking, holy shit, what if I just do like a half-inch deficit or a 1-inch deficit? Basically a deficit where I can barely notice it. That will help push me into position a lot better. I have to force my hamstrings to maintain my arch. And then I can also, because I remember listening to Brendan Lilly talk about this too, about learning how to deadlift better, is I think a recent video too, where he talked about, doing deficits. Maybe not a big deficit, because I think 3 inches, like something that high, or even 2 inches, can really keep you out of position. Will basically change your mechanics, make you work more of your lower back, and I think that's okay. But just a lot of thoughts are going through my head. God, I love talking about this stuff. Freaking, I'm a nerd. Deadliftnerd.com, that's my blog. Sort of write a little bit, but mostly doing videos on YouTube. But understand that it's really about getting the most leverage out of the weight that helps you improve your lockout strength, and not so much training lockout strength. I think you should do all modalities of training, but then again, you have to understand that you only have so much time to train. So I think block pulls is kind of a good way to help psychologically kind of psych yourself up and train, or feel a heavy weight. Like, I remember pulling 565 just off a rack pulls, it's pretty high off the ground. So basically I'm using my body weight to lean back into it. And it kind of helps build confidence to know, at least I know I can hold 600 pounds, or I know I can hold 565 pounds. So I kind of like that idea. I like using overloading for heavy weights so that I can build myself up to psychologically build the confidence, because if I know I've held 565 in my hands, I know that I can probably pull it off the ground, or there's an opportunity for me to pull it off the ground. Another thing also is eccentric deadlifting. I saw another video. This is kind of how Andy Bolton, I think it's Andy Bolton, and who's the other guy? There's another guy, another deadlifter, fucking massive deadlift, right? Where you unrack the weight off the rack, right? And then you walk back, and then you lower the weight and continue. It's like an eccentric deadlift. It's sort of interesting. Anyways, I've rambled long enough. Click like if you haven't already. If you like this kind of stuff, comment below so that I can make more stuff like this. I enjoy these videos. Thanks for watching, and if you're not a subscriber, click subscribe. See you later. See you in the next video.